And I got to be an author because I was in the film industry. And I got into the film industry because I saw a milk marketing commercial about James Bond in 1973. Right, so there's a very clear, where I got to where I wanted. I got into films because I love story. I'm dyslexic, so I'm not a natural writer. It's not something I ever thought I would do. And once I was in the film industry, I wanted to make my own films. And someone said, you should. There was this great movie called The Third Man, and if you haven't seen it, you need to see this. It's a lovely, lovely movie. And it's written by Graham Greene, the author, who also wrote the screenplay. And he wrote The Third Man, the book, as a treatment for his screenplay. So he turned to Carol Reed, the director, to give everyone an indication, and also to himself, where he wanted to go with the characters. Because a film script, if you've ever seen one, is very, very sparse. It's basically dialogue and a few stage structure. Whether it's interior, exterior, night and day, and wherever. So it's very, very sparse. So I started writing a treatment to a film script I wanted to make. And writing that treatment, I suddenly realised that I either could or was allowed, permitted to write. So I was like 27 at this time. I'd never written anything before, pretty much. So it was a very interesting sort of way to get in. So first of all, I got into storytelling, and I thought there was a barrier to writing, which was dyslexia. And then when I was in the film industry, I discovered writing essentially through The Third Man. So milk marketing in The Third Man, an Orson Welles movie, found me as a writer. I never wrote the film script to the treatment because as anyone here, there are always writers. I always find there are writers in the audience. And everyone will know who's ever done any writing, where you start writing and the words kind of fall into place, and there's all of a sudden a little endorphin rush when the words do what you want them to do. And any skill, if you play the oboe and all of a sudden you get a really pure, perfect note, then you go, yes, aced it. It's the same with writing, it's the same with anything. All of a sudden you realise that things are working for you. And as soon as I started writing, I did this treatment, this short story. It took me until like 3 in the morning. I'm an old typewriter. I had a portable Adler, still got it. And then I had a 3,000 word short story, and my life changed completely. And I want to be an author. I love it. It's storytelling. I'm in the film industry, and I was attracted to the film industry, as I said, through this milk marketing board commercial, where they showed a clip of James Bond. It was and the Golden Gun, which is still my favourite Bond. And there's all these explosions and protector screaming and leaping into Roger Moore's arms, and all of a sudden someone would yell cut, right, and then there's a bell ring like that, and you pull back and you can see all these people making the movie and the film set and the smoke and mirrors, and it's like, I have to have me some of that. This make-believe world that I loved, and I got into it and worked in the film industry. But telling stories and writing is the same. It's smoke and mirrors. You're creating a world out of nothing, and there's a wonderful purity to the written word, and it's magic because I'm just putting words down, and the people who are reading it, it's making pictures in their heads that they make. And I always argue that reading is arguably a more imaginative pursuit than writing, because you're doing the pictures, and that's why I love fantasy readers so much, is because they have this expansive imagination that seems to have no bounds at all, which I love. And that's why it's such a great genre. You can muck around with everything. It's like the sandbox of the literary world. I'll come up, a science fiction writer will come up with an idea, and then it will move into the mainstream 25 years later. And everybody go, oh, brilliant, what a fantastic novel. And it's like, yeah, it's been done 30 years ago by us in genres.
So your first problem is the aeroplane.
Yeah.
Doesn't for me. Can you for those who know what it is?
Yeah, so the aeroplane, so I write by this system which I call the narrative dare. So what I do is I just have a narrative dare, I give someone a certain task, and then I write my way out of it. So the narrative dare, the aeroplane, is that Jane Eyre, the character Jane Eyre, from Jane Eyre, is kidnapped out of the original manuscript on page 208. Right. And because Jane Eyre is told in the first person,
she's then blank from every single copy of Jane Eyre all the way around the planet. Right. So my character, Thursday Next, is a literary detective, and she has to find out who kidnapped Jane Eyre and how to get her back into her book. And there's an awful lot of nonsense and other stuff that goes on at the same time. But that is essentially what the book is all about.
It was a success.
Yes, there are 7 in the series. Well, Thursday Next then goes to find there is a policing agency inside fiction for all the problems. Because I had this idea that when your book is on a shelf, all the characters in it are sort of just sitting around chatting and having a cup of coffee and eating a bun, right? And as soon as you put it off the shelf, they go, whoa, hang on, everyone, leave it, where are they going? Hang on, they're going straight to page 208, and they all leap into place and start acting away. And then they leap from page to page. So behind the book, as you're reading it, there's this immensely complex, what's I call an imaginary transference engine, and this just chaotic scenes behind the written word. And then I can create all kinds of interesting conceits, like there's only 6 pianos in the book world. So you have to have this team of people who are like sort of, piano resource management technicians who have to get pianos all around the book world wherever it's needed. So there's all sorts of fun like that, and there are continuity errors, massive continuity errors in the classics, all of which have to be dealt with by a policing agency that exists inside fiction. So it's kind of literary fiction, I suppose. But yeah.
I'm going to confess it, I'm not a well-read man. When I read your books, I get a lot of the jokes.
Good, yes.
I didn't know there's a wish you sound small for you. But it doesn't matter.
No, I mean it doesn't matter at all. I mean the whole reason, because of the dyslexia, and I don't want to come back to that, but it's a big part of my life. It's anyone who has dyslexia. What it means is that academia kind of passes you by because you're not good at school. If you're not particularly good at reading or writing, you're not going to be very good at school. You're going to pull stuff in. You really are. The stuff that interests you, you're really going to stick in. Really going to stick to the sides. But there is, within the whole Thursday Next series, there is a kind of sniggering in the back of English class, that you can say, okay, Juliet, Romeo and Juliet, a couple of warning signs, he was actually in love with Rosalind, literally like 10 minutes ago. So this is someone who can change his mind like that, and all these sorts of little things that I think are quite amusing. The classics are flawed. Some of them are really very good. Some of them are very boring. Pamela, very boring. Don't read it. You really shouldn't. But other ones, yeah, cross that. But other ones are really, really, really good. But again, massive continuity errors. I mean, continuity error I really like. If anyone's read Great Expectations, either recently or at all, or seen the movie, it begins with prison hulks adrift in the Medway River. Right, great start, sort of oily water and the moon and the ripples and everything like that. And Maggot, the convict, has escaped from the prison hulk. He's swum to the shore, and there on the shore he meets Pip, right, the protagonist of the story. And he says, right, Pip, you need to get to be a file to get this great iron off my leg, and then some victuals to eat, because victuals being food and everything. And as soon as you read this, or as soon as I read this, I go, how did he swim from the prison hulk with a great iron on his leg? This does not make any sense at all. And what this tells us is that Charles Dickens couldn't swim. He knew nothing about swimming. And anyone who read the book, well, I mean, it was serialised. Anyone who sort of copy edited or anything either couldn't swim either or didn't dare say anything. So for me, it's like, right, well, if that's a problem in the book world, what you need to do is you need to get jurisdiction. They go, okay, I've got this serious problem in Great Expectations. Emergency, you've got to deal with it. Okay, I want a motorboat, I want a Corbus drill, a hook, and a life preserver. And they just go into the backstory, Great Expectations, putter up the midway, and just put a life preserver on the side of the hulk, and that's how he gets there. Otherwise, there's no book. What can you do? So there's a lot of fun to be had with the classics because there's a lot of continuity errors in the classics. A lot of them, just really don't make much sense at all. So yeah, be quite fun.
Okay. Is there a question from the audience?
Yes. Yeah. No, I still watch them, so I'm sort of involved in that in a sort of vertically integrated way. I'm not, no. When I got the gig to be an author, I thought, well, I'm going to give this my fullest attention. And I did actually write 10 books in 10 years, which was quite hard work. I do more like maybe one every 2 years now, because I have sort of other things that I'm doing. I don't know. Not I don't know. I don't know. I miss it. It was great fun. I did it for nearly 20 years. Worked on quite a big bunch of.
If anyone's seen Highlander 2, yeah, which is on the top 10 worst movies ever made, I was there. But I also worked on things like GoldenEye, The Saints, GoldenEye, The Saints. Big pictures, which were great fun. You know, Entrapment. So there's another one, Catherine Zeta-Jones. So Quills, yeah, all kinds of. So The Saint, yeah. So lots of big features, which was great fun. But I don't anymore.
Cool. Post-apocalyptic isn't the only series you've written.
No.
Should we chat about the teenage series?
Yeah.
Dragon Slayer.
Yes.
Why did you switch to? What did you feel you were consciously switching to teenage, or did it just turn out to be a book that someone in office, someone said, you know, it's a bit YA or something like that?
Yeah. I mean, none of the above, really. I mean, the interesting thing about, so when I was writing, I wrote 5.5, 6 books before I was published. But the first book that was published was not the first book I wrote. Right, so I wrote my 2 nursery crime series. So these are police procedurals with nursery rhyme characters as the victims. So the first one is Humpty Dumpty, found broken at the bottom of the wall. Okay, it wasn't an accident because it's been sitting on the wall for many years. It wasn't suicide. Easter is a depressing time for eggs, obviously, but that wasn't it. Could it have been murder? You know, he might have actually been in fragments before he hit the ground. You know, so I kind of like that idea, and that was the first book I ever wrote. And the narrative there is, you know, very obviously, you know, Humpty Dumpty, who did it and why? Because I always felt that there was more to the story. There's more to all those stories. I mean, Little Red Riding Hood, what the hell is going on there? You know. So that was the first book I wrote. Then I followed that up with I didn't get a publisher for that initially. So I followed that up with a sequel to a book I couldn't get published, which was called The Fourth Bear, and this was retelling The Three Bears and Goldilocks. And Goldilocks turns into she's an investigative reporter that is found dead on Somworld, which is a First World War theme park next to where the bears live. You know, that's not in the original story. I added that. And The Three Bears, I think, are really interesting because for me, the biggest problem with the Three Bears story is the porridge, right? Because if you recall, Daddy Bear porridge, large bowl, too hot, right? Mummy Bear, medium bowl, too cold. Baby Bear, small bowl, just right. So from a thermodynamic point of view, this doesn't add up, and any detective would know instantly there's a massive problem with, you know, Father Bear's account of the porridge. Add to the fact that Mummy Bear and Daddy Bear were sleeping in separate beds. Right, now to me that's like marital problems within the Bear family. And what that leads you on to, the logical conclusion of this is there had to be a fourth bear involved. So you can see the fun you can have looking at the slightly bizarre logic within nursery rhyme. Anyway, so I wrote those 2. I couldn't get them published. And then I wrote The Airy Fair, because at that point I thought it wasn't going to be published, so it didn't matter. And then I wrote The Last Dragon Slayer, which is my it was YA then, but it's kind of, I suppose, middle grade fiction now. And I wrote that because my sister said to me, why don't you write a book about dragons and magic? And I went, yeah, all right. And that was it. And I think the fun thing about, and I said this earlier on the earlier panel we had, is that there are authors, I think, out there who start and they write a book, and they get it out, and maybe they publish it on, you know, Kindle or whatever, and, you know, they get some horrific, you know, reviews out of the gate, and they stop. And I think that's a big problem now, because, you know, to really get into your pace, you need to have written 3 or 4 novels, I think, then you start really understanding. And when you're doing that, and because I didn't try and get anything of this published, I sent them out to be looked at by editors and publishers. But I didn't privately, publish anything because you didn't do it in those days. This is the 90s. So you can have a lot of fun just experimenting with writing, and I think that's perhaps something that's missing now so much, is just experimenting and see what happens, see what works, and not really worrying too much about the rules and regulations. No one said to me, why do you do YA? It was just my sister went, well, why do you do a book about Magic and Dragons? I went, okay, a bit more of a children's book, I guess, so let's start writing that. So I wrote that. And that did, I put that out, to editors and publishers, didn't find a sale either, and I wrote another one after that, but eventually I got the AFL, published. And then years later they said, have you got anything else you want to do? And I went, I've got The Last Dragon's there. And it was like, just bring it out, spell check it, rewrite it, brush off the electrons, because it's been on the hard drive a while, and yeah, you got it published. But that had, it was meant to be a trilogy, but it turned into 4, and that's done now, and that's out there, and it's a finished series. Yeah.
Now, because you worked in the film business, when it's starting to look up and say, we're going to film them, do you think, oh good, I know how this works, or do you think, oh blimey, I know how this works?
Yeah, it was kind of, take the money, basically. I think the relation, I think it was, I can't remember who it was I remember his name in a sec. There was an American author, it was probably either sort of Scott Fitzgerald or one of those two, or, the guy who went duck shooting with Gertrude Stein, can't remember. Old Man in the Sea, what's his name? Anyway, thank you. Did he go duck shooting with Gertrude Stein? I just love this idea, they did. And Orson Welles was there as well, I just love this idea. And I think the relationship was that he used to go to the sort of border of sort of Nevada and California and throw the books across, and they'd throw a second on your back. And that was about how the relationship worked. And I was under no illusions, because once you sell the rights, it's gone. You can't sell your house and then turn up 3 weeks later and say, I'm not sure what you've done with the curtains is quite right, And it's gone forever. And because of that, because your decision is basically yes or no, you have to kind of make sure that you're going to sell it to someone who you think might be able to do a good thing with the book. And we'd had quite a few offers for film rights, and the producer was a guy named Pete Janine, who had produced In Bruges, right, which is one of certainly in my top 10, maybe in my top 5. It's just a fantastic piece of work. And there he was, Pete Janine, and he came out all the way out to meet me, which is always very flattering, And he wanted the rights, he bought the rights, and ultimately he couldn't get the name to film, and he sold it to Sky, who didn't have the budget to really do it justice, which was a shame, I felt. But what can you do? I've got a new kitchen, So, what do you think of the movie, Jasper? And go, well, the kitchen's great. That's really the best way to look at it. And authors who go, they took my work and they ruined it, and all this kind of stuff. Those Philistines. And you go, yeah, but you got a new car. You know you're going to give it to him. Come on. Give us a break. Yeah.
Is there a question from the audience, please?
Yeah.
So what was your literary dare for Shades of Grey?
My literary dare for Shades of Grey. Okay, so Shades of Grey was me moving away from writing books about other characters from other people's books. So the Third Next series is very much, borrowing on stuff that's already out there. The classics. I think I've got Hamlet actually comes into the real world in book 4 because he's a bit worried he's been misinterpreted as a ditherer. He talks a lot and doesn't do very much. So I'm not that bad at all. And there's a nice riff on the internal view we have on ourselves rather than how other people see us, which I thought was quite amusing. And he comes to the real world and, he's going to make... I think he enters a Hamlet lookalike contest and comes 4th, which is embarrassing. And then he gets taken into a Starbucks and he's given all these choices and he spontaneously soliloquizes, because that's what happens when Hamlet comes across choices. It's like emergency sort of procedure is just to talk, So it's kind of, to mocha or to latte, that is the problem. That is the question. So I was just using all these characters from classical fiction and also from the nursery rhymes, but I was breaking away with Shades of Grey as my 6th novel because it's a novel of my writing. It's characters I've made up, situations that I've made up. And for anyone who hasn't read Shades of Grey, and that's my Shades of Grey, not the other 50 Shades of Grey.
That's one question.
Yeah, there's one question. 49 fewer shades of grey is what I call my one. So the narrative there for that was write a story about a social order based entirely around visual colour, right? Because I like the idea of visual colour because visual colour doesn't exist in the real world, right? There is no colour in the real world. It's just motion of material, right? Colour is only something unique to anything that can see, essentially. So, back in your front room, right, if you don't have a cat, right, that has no colour in it. And if something falls off the shelf, it won't make a noise, because noise is, again, an abstract concept that is unique to anything that has the ability to hear. And that's the same as colour. So anything here of colour, see, this is not blue in real life. This is just blue because you made it blue. And that's an interesting abstract concept. So flowers are only beautiful because there's something there to see them, because they're there to attract something to them. So that's why they're beautiful, that's why they're colourful. A setting sun, right, is not beautiful, right? When you see a setting sun and go, oh my goodness, isn't that beautiful? You should reserve all the praise for yourself, because it is your visual cortex that has made it beautiful. There is no beauty in real at all. So to take the abstract concept and then say, okay, let's make it a governing factor in governance. So the world is basically based around people that you can see. You can see red, yellow, or blue, or combinations thereof, or no colour at all. You see everything in shades of grey. And the more red you can see, the higher up the hierarchy you are. And this is what it's based on. So at age 20, you have your Ishihara test and your life is fixed. And there's this very, very sort of, there's a book of harmony written by Munsell, this colour genius, and everything is fixed in your life. And it's really about humans trying to figure out their way through a very, very oppressive regime. But they are not only the prisoners, but they're also the guards as well. So I kind of like that terror of localism. But the colour also is about, there's a colour-based economy, there's a colour-based healthcare, everything is based around visual colour. And that was really what I thought I'd do. So it's a lot of speculative writing, I think. It's to take the narrative dare. And I think the exciting thing about a narrative dare is narrative dare is narrative dare, but the dare part of it is that you can't let yourself off the hook, right? So once I've made my dare, my narrative dare, I have to stick with it, no matter how difficult or daft it is, because the idea is that to make it work, you have to rummage a little bit deeper in that authorial toolbox, or change those storytelling tools so you can make this concept work, because I feel there's no idea that can't be made to work somehow. So that's why I love this narrative dare concept. But that was the narrative dare. Yeah, just take visual colour and run with it. Yeah, I kind of it's kind of like being stuck in school as well. I think because of the rules and regulations are very people have prefects and it's very kind of school based. And I think if you've ever had the sort of nightmare where you're stuck age 12 in school with all the people who are rubbish being made prefects over you, and you've got to be stuck there forever. Right, that it's that kind of terror, being stuck at school forever, age 12 or 13 or something. It's like, don't fancy that. So there's all kinds of elements coming into it. Yeah. Good. Did you like it? Oh, good, thank you.
Absolutely love it.
Oh, good, yeah.
And it was the first of yours that I read, and I'm so glad I started there.
Yeah, it is absurd, it's funny in places. It also, it's kind of what I've done a sort of whole series of what I call social thrillers. So Early Riser and Constant Rabbit, they're more thrillers based around sort of rather bizarre social sort of concepts that we have. And within Shades of Grey, it's very much about marriage markets, which humans don't really talk about very much, but is there, and reproductive politics. So, if you're two people who are red and you're quite low reds, you could actually then have a child who's a higher red, and then you could bring, greater position for your children. So and then people are obviously trying to game the system, and it's, survival in a very difficult sort of place. So, yeah.
The world building.
You like that, yeah. Good.
So thoughtful. So
Oh, thank you. Yeah. Thank you. Yes.
It's a sticky question, though.
Yeah, go on.
Why did it take so long to get onto that side story? We were all waiting for it.
Oh, Red Side Story, yeah, it took nearly 14 years, I think, before that came out. Well, the thing was that I'd written those first 6 novels, which I describe as moving the memory furniture around in people's heads. So, I got, thank you very much for that little ripple of laughter about the bears. So what I was doing, I was moving your memory furniture around in your head. The 3 bears have been in that particular place in your head, and I've just nudged them to the left or right, and there's something quite exciting about that. And Terry Pratchett used to say that his fantasy was very much reality moved 5 degrees, so you can see something more, a little bit extra sliver that you can see, and there's comedy there, because it's something that you never noticed before until an author brings it to your attention. So I kind of like that. But I think what we found was that I'd gone so way off field from those original 6 books with nursery rhymes and classical characters, and I'd gone into this Shades of Grey thing, and it was a complete change around. And I think a lot of people were wanting memory furniture being moved, and it didn't sell. It sold okay, and people who read it, who were, die-hard fans or new readers, said, yeah, I loved it, and were saying, being very generous, as were you. But for the most part, people looked at it and went, nah, I want more bears, want more talking bears and Song World and, Toast Marketing Board and, stuff like that. So it didn't sell. So we moved back to doing the Thursday books. We went on to do the Last Dragon Slayer. But after a while, I kept on getting more and more emails from people saying, Jasper, I really like this book. So if you emailed me, you're partly responsible for the second in the series. And then it became sort of pleading and then begging and then sort of threatening. And eventually I thought, well, I'll just write number 2. And then I did.
You did leave us on the cliffhanger. Yeah. So it's a bit of a rod for your own bucket.
Yeah, I mean, if I think the thing is that I didn't know where I was going to go with the book. I'd have trouble with endings. I very rarely have an ending of a book in mind. The only one I really did was with Last Dragon Slayer and Constant Rabbit, where I had an idea where I was going. Much easier if you got an ending to a book. That's why I think, crime is a little bit easier to write, perhaps, because you know where it's got to end up. Either they get away with it or they don't. It's simple. Choice of 2. So I think. What's the question? What do you ask? Oh yeah, cliffhanger. Yeah. So if you're reading a book and it's got a cliffhanger, what it probably means is the author didn't know how to finish the book. And I didn't. It's like when I'm in trouble, I start a book on a train. That's a great thing. I've done it about 3 times. Great way to start a book, because you've got 2 people. They're going from one place to another place. The reason they're going from one to another place going to be revealed later. The relationship between the 2 people, it can be revealed through the dialogue. They can look at random stuff out the window, and things kind of just happen because someone will walk into they'll stop at a railway station or something like that. Great way to start a book. But if you come across a book that has, finished on cliffhanger, it means we had no idea how to finish it. We just went, to be continued. And that's what I did, rather foolishly. So, yeah, sorry about that.
Yeah. And you're working on the 3rd in the series?
No, I'm working on the 8th Thursday Next book at the moment. It's called Dark Reading Matter, and it'll be the 8th and final in the series. And that's been an interesting book to write, because a lot of people have been following the Thursday Next series from the beginning, and it's been 25 years now. But very invested in the characters, so I have to be quite careful, I think. And finishing a series is quite a tricky thing to do, because you've got to kind of wrap it up in a way that is kind of has a completeness to it, and there's no real questions, that you can still ask, and it really has to end in a good way. And I've only finished the series once, so I haven't got much practice at it. But it's taken a while, a little bit longer than I'd hoped, but hopefully it'll deliver to the readers. And it's very much for the readers of the Thursday Next book, not with a mind to other people coming into the series. It's for people who've been following Thursday for a while. Yeah. So hopefully a bit of fun.
And that's next year?
Yeah, next year, hopefully end of next year. If I can finish it by the end of this year. Yeah, fingers crossed.
One of the books that begins on the train is The Early Lies.
Yes.
Which I have to say is my favourite.
Oh, good, thank you.
The only book I've reread in recent years.
Okay.
It's also, I think, possibly your most Welsh book.
Yes, yeah, that's true. Possibly.
You bring Wales in a lot to your books. You live in Wales. Is that what is it significant to you? But is when I first read it, I don't think I've read any other science fiction or fantasy set in Wales. Do you think there is any?
I'm not sure that there is. It's quite interesting. I mean, there is a Welsh sort of literary sort of I don't know, what do you call it, tradition, perhaps. But I think there's more through, Jasper Fforde, which is more about recitation and short form. So the great Welsh novel, I think, is going out on a limb here. It's slightly more a construct of people who are kind of in charge of the Welsh literary set, and they have a very clear idea of what they want a Welsh literature to look like, and that does not include the genres. Right, so I've been writing books which have been set in Wales for years now, and none of them get any traction within the Welsh literary sort of set, which are more about literary matters. And I think the problem with literary books, I always go on a bit I think I'm probably the right audience here though. I find literary writing very dry, lack of comedy, lack of humour. And I always think that if you don't put humour in a book, it's not realistic, because humans are actually really funny. And even when things get bad, they're still fun, and actually they're getting more funny the darker things get. And if you don't write about that, then as far as I'm concerned, it's not realistic. But I think there's maybe part of the literary set that kind of says that if you write something that's funny, it's frivolous. If it's frivolous, it's not serious. And I don't agree with that one bit. But I was very much, I think, when writing Early Riser, I did want it to be how I saw a Welsh novel should be. I was trying to make these characters Welsh in the way. I think 3/4 of the way through the book, you discover they've been speaking Welsh all along, and you never knew it, which I think is quite fun. And it has all kinds of motifs, leitmotifs from Wales, which is the Welsh were very attached to place. So this travel, I think, in the early days of the book, is quite important to that place. It's also, I've been trying to reopen beach enclosures. If anyone doesn't know, the beach enclosures were closing almost half the railway network in the 60s, and I've been slowly reopening the lines which were closed by the beaching acts, and that's one of them. So any railway journeys that feature in my books are a railway that used to be, but is no longer. So the railway journey in that one is actually one that you could genuinely do back in the day, but you can't anymore.
Do we have any more questions from the audience, please?
Oh, go on. Yes.
So your characters visit lots of other books and enjoy the scenery and things like that. What book would you like to visit?
What book would I like to visit? I don't know. I mean, a favourite book of mine, which I'm always pushing to people, and I'm astonished not more people have read it, especially as there was a very good movie made of it quite recently by the Coen brothers, is True Grit. And it's not a long book, so it's not one of those big sort of house bricks that I find so terrifying. It's a relatively short book, and it's a book very much like the one that springs to mind is like Treasure Island. If you read the first 2 pages of Treasure Island, I would challenge you not to be able to read the rest. You're just in there, and it's like, whoa, I'm so going to enjoy myself. You put me, I'm in good hands. Robert Louis Stevenson, you're in good hands instantly with Treasure Island, and more so than any of his other more so than any of his other books. And I think that's what I love about True Grit, is by the second paragraph, not only do you love the voice of the protagonist, not only do you know what it's about, it's a revenge story, but it's more like a love story. because often revenge stories are love stories, and you just know because of the prose that you're going to adore the book, and you do. So I think that's a book that I'd probably like to meet Mattie Ross, because she's quite a character. And the Heidi Steinfeld version, the Coen Brothers version, was tremendous, and Kim Darby did a great job in the earlier one as well. But it's just great. The dialogue just sparkles.
My first ever car was a Ford Fiesta. Painted up unnatural colour of aquamarine.
Aquamarine, nice.
You've got a Ford Fiesta, which
Yes.
is different.
Yeah, the Ford Fiesta, that's Ford Fiesta with two Fs, because I'm Ford with two Fs and then an E on the end. So the Ford Fiesta is actually a sort of conference we have every 2 years. So it's a festival of Ford-related tomfoolery. And this is based in Swindon, because the Thursday Next books are based in Swindon. And we do it every 2 years, and it's coming up next May, in fact. And it's quite fun, because I'm very much a lot of different genres, a kind of mix. I don't really I'm not really accepted by one major. If I was crime, I'd go to all the crime conventions, but I don't. I got invited to the one in, I think it's in Harrogate. I got the Harrogate ones, and I've done British science fiction once, and I'm not really accepted by any. So I'm delighted that I have my own one-man festival, and it's very small. It's wonderfully small. We're all kind of very family sort of now, and I think it's no more than about 160, 170 people. And for a weekend, we just do silly stuff related to the books. And it's great fun, and I do a reading from the latest book, which no one's read, obviously. And then there's Fancy Dress, which is like me falling into my own head. And I often don't know what they are, and I'm going, what are you dressed as? And they go, oh, well, we're grammar sites, obviously, duh. A grammar site, I should say, is a parasitic life form that lives inside books and lives off grammar. And they often will take punctuation as well. The end of Finnegan's Wake, I think, has grammar sites have been in there and taking all the punctuation. But what they did is they said, well, no, we'll classify as the masterwork of a great genius, and no one will complain. And it worked. How about that? Who'd have thought it?
Yeah, so if you haven't seen it online, do look it up. The March of the Danvers is the whole.
Yeah, Mrs. Danvers. So Mrs. Danvers from Rebecca, the slightly creepy housekeeper. We have the March of the Danvers, and we have this sort of mass Danver sort of idea. It's kind of like people dressing up as stormtroopers, and like you have 1,000 of them. And we managed to have 92 Mrs. Danvers marching around, and it actually goes out. Usually conferences are bounded within the sort of barriers of the conference centre, or wherever you have it, hotel or whatever. They actually went over the road to Asda and started marching around Asda as Mrs. Danvers until they were asked to leave, and it was, quite an event. What have I done? It's great fun.
Does anyone else have a question? In that case, I'll ask you about your website, which I think is extraordinary.
Oh, my website.
It's a throwback. This is very in time.
Oh, no. It's taken.
It was fun and full of extraordinary things.
Yes.
Is this solely down to you?
No.
A lot of stuff.
There is a lot of stuff, but it's taken a lot of time to do. So no, this was me and my wife. So we JasperForde.com was made live in 2000, and at the time there were 30 million web pages, right, in websites in total, and the only ones which were older than us is probably IMDb and Amazon. And a few others which are now, but before all the rest. And we pretty much kept it the way that it is. It's written in HTML. There's none of that sort of nonsense, Squarespace nonsense, and that makes every single website look exactly the same. So when you go to my website, you will see a website as they used to look in the noughties. And I think the biggest technological advance we've had in the last 25 years was justified text, which I introduced to some fanfare, probably in about 2005. But it's HTML. It's the easiest thing to edit in your life, and for the most part, it works on mobiles as well. So I just keep it as it is, and I tell people that I have a classic insurance, classic website insurance, which is much cheaper, of course. No,
You don't take it out of the rock.
yeah, that's true. I don't take it out right. It's pretty stable as well, and it's got over 1,000 pages there. And some of them you can only reach through little links within pages, and I don't think anyone's ever found all the the pages, and so it just goes on forever.
And one of the beautiful things is you can actually upgrade your book.
Yes, yes.
So version 1.1.
Yeah, you can upgrade your book. There's all kinds of things, and screensavers and photographs to download, and just endless. You can do a "How Hamlet Are You" competition. You know, just like what sort of a Hamlet you are. Yeah, and we always added to stuff. We never took anything away. So we just add and add and add and add, and then just leave it there. It's fine. It's good.
I hardly recommend it. Well, it only remains me to thank the marketing board and yes, Jasper Fforde.
Oh, thank you.